Tuesday Drive.
It may have escaped your memory, but the weekend just gone marked the 1-year anniversary that the Currowan fire was finally extinguished. To mark the moment in time, the Shoalhaven City Council quietly released a video called Our Shoalhaven 2019. It features local community leaders all sharing their thoughts, along with former ABC journalist Richard Moorcroft narrating, and our Mayor Amanda Findley. Here's just an excerpt from the video.
Today, we recognise the contribution, the generosity and the goodwill of those who came to the aid of Shoalhaven residents during the bushfires. There are countless residents, emergency support services, volunteer groups and community service providers, not-for-profits and government agencies who went above and beyond to protect our community. Yet, we need to remember that recovery always takes time, and that every individual is at a different stage of their recovery journey. So, let's stay connected and committed to supporting one another as people begin to rebuild, re-establish and grow together.
Joining me now is the Mayor, who not only reflects in the video, but also guided the Shoalhaven through a very tough and traumatic experience for many residents. Mayor, welcome to Tuesday Drive.
Thanks for having me on.
So where did the idea come to make this video?
Well, like all good projects, there was a few components that came together, and it was, basically one of those workshopping moments where it's like, okay, so this important event's coming up. How should we mark it? How can we mark it? And how can we do it in a day that is, when we've got all these COVID restrictions, how can we make something that will be lasting and be able to be shared? So that's how we collectively came up with the council media staff and myself, and we just sat around and brainstormed that as a digital presentation that, really had that forward thinking about optimism, thinking about resilience, but also acknowledging that many, many people are just not at that stage in their healing journey just yet.
What was your reaction when it dawned on you that it's 12 months since the fires were put out?
Oh, gracious. Some days I think that 12 months feels like such a long time ago, and it feels like such a long time ago because so much work has happened, from Shoalhaven City Council's perspective, and obviously so much work has happened in the community as well. And, but then that puts you into that mindset, there's so much has gone on. But it really was only yesterday that this all happened, and that there is still so much work to do in our community. So, it's that strange feeling of yesterday, today, tomorrow.
You mentioned the work that the council's putting in, and of course that local community groups are putting in. How is the Shoalhaven faring a year on?
So it's different for everyone, Stephen, and it's different because we have a lot of people who have, built their houses and they've moved in their new houses, and that's really great for them. And, their emotional space has changed when they move into their home. But for many, they're getting to that point where insurance companies are trying to ask them to leave their rental properties, or that they won't support them financially anymore. Many people are struggling with, just coming to terms with what happened and trying to get things in place for a rebuild. So it's patchy across the place. Although the thing that gives everyone the most optimism, I guess, is the landscape looking slightly better than what it did 12 months ago. It's a great relief for many people who suffered really intense eco grief if they didn't lose a house or have that damage going on. Many people suffered that pain to see that the bush around them was destroyed. So it's good to see the bush is coming back somewhat, although we know that not all of the bush is going to come back exactly the way it was, and that in a lot of ways that it has caused an environmental catastrophe as well on another hand in some locations.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned the bush. I know when I'm driving to Sussex Inlet, and you're driving down Sussex Inlet Road, how the bush has grown back and how much it's grown back in the 12 months. But it's you're right, it's just not quite the same, is it?
It really isn't. And I mean, if for the experts in Australian natives, they're looking for canopy restructure because it's canopy that really, brings forests back to life. And, any one of our, famous bushwalks that got smashed during those fires, Mount Bushwalker or Rusden Head, those kind of places, when you go to those places, the ground's still quite brittle in spots. But in other spots, the growth is so thick that you can't even navigate through it, and it's probably up to your waist by now. So that's what I experienced not so long ago, and so it is a very different landscape, and people would have been used to lots of birds and lots of kangaroos and lots of wallabies, but they're slowly coming back, and the sounds of the bush are slowly coming back. Although a lot of people will be going, the sounds of the bush this year was the noisiest for cicadas ever. So it's always that swings and roundabouts. Yeah.
Now, this might be an interesting question. I had the privilege of interviewing you when you were first elected as mayor many years ago. You've been in the position for quite some time now. What lessons did you learn as the mayor during this experience that the Shoalhaven faced?
I think that my biggest lesson that I learned was to try and make time for myself. Now, that sounds really strange, but I was working really, really long hours, and the CEO here said, "Don't forget, Amanda." It was really good, wise words. "Don't forget, Amanda, you're actually in this for the long haul, not a short burst, because you've got recovery to go through yet." And it was through that I was like, "Oh, okay, I know what he's talking about here. Don't burn yourself out," because it's really easy to go so hard and not recognise the symptoms of burnout. So I think that was the number one lesson, was that we all want to do so much, but we've all got to, you've got to keep a little bit of fuel in the tank for the next day, and care for yourself and care for those that are around you as well in whatever way that you can, even though I really relied on the people within my personal networks to do some of that looking out for me, feeding me, making sure that I had milk in the fridge for my cup of tea and, things like that. So reaching out to Stephen and not being afraid to ask for help was one of those lessons that I think myself and a lot of people learned over that terrible time.
You're listening to Tuesday Drive on Triple UFM, and I'm speaking with Shoalhaven Mayor Amanda Findley. Mayor, it's really interesting that you just mentioned that before about looking after yourself, because I can't imagine that the pressure that you would have been under, let alone the emotions running, just not only yourself but the community. And I spoke to you a couple of times during the bushfires. How are you 12 months on?
I'm better now. I'm much better now. Having a really good break, Stephen, to be honest, over the Christmas period has really helped me to reflect and to regroup on everything that happened. Getting, towards the end of last year, it was actually a really emotional end to the year. And I'll be quite frank that I found myself quite often in tears for small things that, I felt like it was an overreaction, that I'd be, feeling a little bit weepy about something. But, it actually was that, that those symbols from your body that are asking you to slow down, take a little bit of a breath, take a little bit of time to think about the things that you've been through, get in touch with some of those, those wonderful people that I've met over the last 12 months. And I mean, one of the examples of tears that I'll give you was, I went to visit a family in Conjola Park, and they got to move into their house probably, 6 days before Christmas. It was pretty close to the wire. And they invited me up to look at their new home and to see how beautifully it had all come together. And they were so happy, and I sat on their veranda and I burst into tears.
Oh, wow.
I said, "Oh my goodness, I'm just so happy for you." And they're like, "Is that why you're crying?" It's like, yeah, it's like my emotion for you and the happiness that I'm experiencing from you is leaking out of my eyes. So, funny reactions that you have like that. And I don't feel that way now, because I've had a bit of a space and, a bit of time on the beach, enjoying all the happy faces that have been enjoying the Shoalhaven for the summer, which has been, pretty amazing to have so many people here, really kicking back and enjoying what Australia has to offer instead of, those usual trips overseas that many would take.
I think we certainly saw that, didn't we, over the Christmas period with the extra people coming down from Sydney and across from Canberra. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I know that some of, talking to some business people on the weekend, they're like thinking, well, we're exhausted. We normally know when we can look forward to the break, but we don't actually know when the break's coming because it's been so busy in the Shoalhaven now since probably about July last year.
Now, just before I let you go, one thing that you mentioned in the video was the Stay Kind movement. What's all that about?
Now, this is just incredible. The two beautiful people, Ralph and Kathy from the Stay Kind movement, they lost their son in a one-punch incident in King's Cross. Then they later lost another son. Details are not known to me. But these two beautiful people were ambassadors for Australia Day, and they came down to Berry and they gave the most moving speech about their life. And they introduced this concept around Stay Kind. And Stay Kind is really about practicing, I suppose, random acts of kindness every single day. And, if gratitude is something that we do and we feel better for that, then that's great. But if we can practice these random acts of kindness whenever we can, and they did challenge everyone to do it once a day, then that we would feel better about it. So that's that connection that I use in the video is about, when we do kind things to others and others get a kick out of that, we also feel happier about that as well, because it's really lovely to see someone's reaction, but it's also equally as lovely to know that you've done something, even if it's something like paying it forward on a cup of coffee because you've just ordered one and you pay for somebody else's one. Just those random acts really give people a lift, and we never ever really know what's going on in the lives of people around us. We don't know how tough their day's been, what they're going through, what they are going to go through in the future. So, yeah, I just thought it was a beautiful sentiment, and that if we did it as an area, how would we feel in 12 months' time whenever we come to the second anniversary?
Oh, well, on that positive note, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to have a chat with us today on that Tuesday Drive. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for giving me the time to talk about all of those experiences and sharing that video around. Thank you so much.
And that was Shoalhaven Mayor Amanda Findley speaking to me about Council's video to mark the end of the Currowan fire 12 months ago. It's called Our Shoalhaven 2019, and if you haven't seen it, I'll certainly recommend it. I'll pop it up on the Facebook page very, very soon. And not only does it feature community leaders, including Father Michael Dyer from Shoalhaven Rises, Peter Dover from Salt Ministries, Jan Frinken from the Shoalhaven Multicultural Community Group, and Vic Chennell from the Ulladulla Community Land Council, but footage taken not long after the fires by local artist Tim Gergeson. And of course, if this chat has raised any issues, you can call Lifeline on 13 11 14, Beyond Blue on 1300 22 46 36, or Lifeline's Bushfire Recovery Line on 13 43 57.
This is Tuesday Drive.